The morning started like any other Tuesday. Sarah Chen sipped her coffee while reviewing mining reports from the outer colonies. The taste was bitter, but not nearly as bitter as what was coming, at exactly 11:47 a.m. Every communication device on Earth screamed the same message in perfect unison. Attention humans, your species has been deemed inadequate. Sarah dropped her mug. Hot coffee splashed across her desk, soaking into reports that would never matter again. Through her office window, she watched as massive shadows began falling. Across New York City, the ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. Each one stretched for miles, their surfaces gleaming like liquid mercury under the sun. They moved with the silent grace of predators, positioning themselves over every major city on Earth. Sarah. Her assistant Marcus burst through the door, his face pale with terror. The president is calling an emergency meeting. All department heads, now. But Sarah was already moving. As head of Earth's colonial mining division, she knew things about humanity's reach into space that most people didn't. And right now, those secrets might be the only thing standing between her species and extinction. The elevator ride to the emergency bunker felt like descending into hell. The building shook as something massive passed overhead. Through the elevators, small window, Sarah glimpsed people running in the streets. Their faces turned skyward in horror and fascination. The bunker was chaos. President Martinez stood at the head of a conference table, surrounded by generals, scientists, and politicians all talking at once. The wall screens showed the same scene repeating across the globe: silver ships, hovering like storm clouds over every major population center. Quiet. Martinez slammed his hand on the table. Dr. Chen, what do we know about these ... visitors? Sarah pulled up her tablet, fingers shaking slightly. Mr. President, based on the ship configurations and energy signatures, these aren't explorers or traders. This is a military fleet. General Brooks, a man who'd never backed down from any fight, looked sick. How many ships? Preliminary count shows over 3,000 vessels worldwide. Each ship appears to be roughly 5 miles in length. Sarah's voice was steady, but inside she was screaming. Sir, this fleet could glass every major city on Earth simultaneously. The room fell silent except for the hum of air recyclers and the distant rumble of alien engines. Then the screens changed. A face appeared, if you could call it a face. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, skin that shifted between blue and purple, and a mouth that seemed to contain too many teeth. When it spoke, the words came through universal translators with chilling clarity. I am War Commander Zixthik of the Hegemony Fleet. Your species has 37 solar cycles to demonstrate why you should not be ... removed. President Martinez stepped forward. What do you mean by removed? The alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Complete extermination. Your species shows excessive aggression, territorial expansion, and resource depletion patterns. You are dead. Cosmic cancer? We can change. Martinez's voice cracked. We can be better. Zixthik made a sound that might have been laughter. Your colonies have already proven otherwise. The massacre at Kepler 4 for DB was particularly ... instructive. KEPLER 442b was classified beyond top secret. How could they know about the connection died? The screens went black. For a moment, nobody moved. Started talking at once, voices rising in panic and confusion. But Sarah was thinking about Kepler 4 for DB, and the secret that could destroy everything. 3 years ago, human colonists had encountered an indigenous species on Kepler 4b. The official report said the aliens had been hostile, so that human forces had acted in self-defense. But Sarah had seen the real footage. The classified footage, it hadn't been self-defense. It had been slaughter. General Brooks, Sarah said quietly, cutting through the noise. We need to talk. Privately. Brooks looked at her with suspicious eyes. About what? About why there? Really here? And about what we did on Kepler 4b? The general's face went white. He knew. He'd always known, as the two of them moved toward a private conference room. Sarah caught a glimpse of the screens showing the alien ships. They hadn't moved, hadn't fired a single shot. They were just ... waiting. But for what? And why did she have the terrible feeling that humanity's 37 days of grace had already started counting down? Chapter 2. Sins of the past. The classified briefing room felt like a tomb. General Brooks sealed the door and activated the privacy field, a bubble of white noise that would defeat any listening device. Sarah had seen this technology before, but never been inside it. The silence was oppressive. "How much do you know?" Brooks asked without preamble. Sarah met his gaze. "I know that colony ship Endeavor encountered an indigenous species on Kepler 44b. I know that the official report claims they attacked our colonists without provocation. I know that's a lie." Brooks slumped into a chair like a man carrying the weight of worlds. "The natives were peaceful. More than peaceful. They were trying to help us." "Then why?" "Because Colonel Harrison was an idiot and a racist." Brooks's voice was bitter. "The Calera, that's what they called themselves. They approached our landing site with gifts. Food, water, even refined metals they'd extracted from their mines. They wanted to welcome us. Sarah felt sick, and we killed them." Harrison interpreted their approach as an attack formation. He opened fire before anyone could stop him. Plasma cannons against beings who barely had metal tools. Brooks stood and walked to the wall screen, staring at his own reflection. It took 6 minutes to wipe out their entire delegation. 47 beings who'd come in peace. That's not the worst part, is it? Brooks turned, and Sarah saw tears. In the old soldier's eyes, the worst part is what came next. The Kalari had families waiting for their diplomats to return. When they found the bodies, they sent more delegates, this time with white flags, using every peaceful gesture they could. Think of... Sarah closed her eyes. She could already see where this was going. Harrison saw it as a follow-up attack, called for orbital bombardment. Brooks's voice dropped to a whisper. "We turned their capital city into glass. 3 million innocent beings dead in under an hour." The silence stretched between them like an accusation. Finally, Sarah found her voice. "How many people know the truth?" "Maybe 50, scattered across the military and intelligence communities. The official story went out immediately: hostile aliens, heroic human defenders, a tragic but necessary victory for colonial expansion. And now the hegemony knows what really happened." Brooks nodded grimly. "They called it a massacre because that's exactly what it was. Now they're here to make sure we never do it again." A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry. Brooks deactivated the privacy field and opened the door to find Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's top xenobiologist, standing in the hallway with a tablet clutched to her chest. "General Dr. Chunt, thank God you're here. I've been analyzing the hegemony broadcast, and there's something you need to see." They followed Elena to her lab. Passing through corridors filled with military personnel and government officials, all moving with the controlled panic of people facing the end of the world. Elena's lab was a sanctuary of scientific calm, its walls covered with star charts and alien biology displays. "Look at this." Elena pulled up a 3D hologram showing the alien commander. "I've run linguistic analysis on Zixthok's speech patterns. The hegemony isn't just some random alien empire. They're a peacekeeping force." Sarah leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Their language contains specific grammatical structures that indicate moral authority and judicial responsibility. When Zixthok said we were being evaluated, he wasn't using the word for military assessment. He was using the word for a criminal trial." Brooks cursed under his breath. "They're not invaders. They're judges." "More than that," Elena continued. "I've found references to something called the Galactic Accord. It appears to be a treaty or law system that governs how species interact with each other. Based on the linguistic markers, humanity has been charged with violating this accord. The penalty for which," Elena's expression was grim, "complete species termination." A new alarm began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed as an automated voice announced, "All personnel to stations. Priority 1 communication. Incoming." They rushed back to the main briefing room, where President Martinez was already waiting with his full cabinet. The wall screens flickered to life, showing Zixstock's alien features once again. Humans, the war commander began, his four eyes focusing with predatory intensity. We have reviewed your species' colonial records. The massacre of the Kaleri. People was not an isolated incident. New images appeared on the screens. Settlements on distant worlds, mining operations, first contact scenarios. Sarah recognized some of them from her own reports, but others were completely unknown to her. Colony. Ship manifest. Gliese 667cc. Indigenous microorganisms eliminated through terraforming without consent or consideration. Mining operation Beta 7. Wolf 359 system. Sacred burial grounds of the Vorthok people destroyed for mineral extraction. Trade post Gamma, Proxima Centauri. Tribal leaders of the Zenari. Deceived through false contracts, resulting in permanent displacement of their population. Each revelation hit the room like a physical blow. Sarah realized with growing horror that Kepler 442b hadn't been humanity's first sin, it had just been the most violent. Your species, Zixstock continued, follows a pattern of expansion through deception, exploitation, and when necessary, extermination. This behavior violates 17 articles of the Galactic Accord. President Martinez found his voice. We didn't know about any galactic law. We had no way of knowing. Ignorance is not a defense, Zixstock cut him off. Every species that achieves faster than light travel is automatically subject to the Accord. Your actions have consequences beyond your own world. Paused, and for a moment, his expression seemed almost sad. However, the hegemony recognizes that your species is young and may be capable of growth. You will be given one chance to prove that humanity can change its nature. Sarah felt a flicker of hope, but it died quickly when she saw Zixstock's next expression. You have 36 days and 17 hours to demonstrate genuine transformation. If you fail, every human world will be cleansed. Your species will be removed from the galaxy to prevent further contamination. The screens went dark. President Martinez turned to his advisors, his face pale but determined. Options. I want every possible option on the table in the next 6 hours. As the room erupted into frantic planning, Sarah caught General Brooks's eye. They both knew the same terrible truth. How do you prove that an entire species has changed its nature in just over a month? What happens when the hegemony discovers that some humans would rather fight than surrender? Chapter 3. The Impossible Choice 33. Days remained. Sarah stood in the ruins of what had been the Global Colonial Administration building. 3 days ago, riots had torn through the capital as news of humanity's trial spread despite government attempts at containment. The building's smart glass windows lay shattered across the plaza, reflecting the gray sky like fragments of broken dreams. The world had gone insane. Religious groups proclaimed the aliens as either divine judgment or demonic invasion. Military commanders argued for immediate nuclear strikes against the hegemony ships. Scientists desperately searched for any technology that might level the playing field. Politicians demanded solutions that didn't exist, and Sarah was trying to do the impossible, prove that humanity deserved to survive. Dr. Chen? A young voice interrupted her thoughts. Sarah turned to find Amy O'Coffer, a junior xenobiologist who'd been working around the clock since the ultimatum began. The girl's eyes were red with exhaustion, but there was something else there: excitement.
What?
Is it Amy? I think I found something that might help. Amy held up a data pad with shaking hands. I've been analyzing the hegemony's own broadcasts, looking for any information about their civilization. And I found a reference to something called the Redemption Protocols. Sarah's pulse quickened. What kind of protocols? It's mentioned in the deep linguistic structure of their communications. Apparently, the Galactic Accord has provisions for species that demonstrate genuine change. But it's not just about stopping harmful behaviors. It's about actively making amends. We're interrupted by the approach of a military convoy. General Brooks climbed out of the lead vehicle, his uniform crisp despite the chaos surrounding them. Behind him came Dr. Alina Vasquez and a man Sarah didn't recognize all. Elderly, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority, Sarah. Amy Brooks nodded to them both. "I'd like you to meet Director Jackson. He runs a program that officially doesn't exist." Jackson's smile was thin and cold. "Dr. Chen, your reputation precedes you. I understand you've been advocating for diplomatic solutions to our current predicament." There was something in his tone that made Sarah's skin crawl. "I've been trying to find a way to save our species. Yes, as have we all. But I think you'll find our approach more practical." Jackson activated a holographic projector, displaying a three-dimensional map of the solar system. The positions of hegemony ships. We've been analyzing their fleet composition and defensive patterns. They're not invulnerable. Sarah felt ice in her veins. "You're planning to attack them?" "We're planning to defend ourselves," Jackson corrected. "The hegemony may be advanced, but they're overconfident. They've positioned their ships in standard patrol formations, leaving several tactical vulnerabilities we can exploit." Brooks looked uncomfortable, but determined. "Sarah, we've run the simulations. If we coordinate a simultaneous strike using every nuclear weapon on Earth, plus the orbital defense platforms, we might be able to take out 30 to 40% of their fleet. And then, they'll wipe out every human settlement in the galaxy." Sarah said flatly. "Maybe. Or maybe they'll realize we're not the easy prey they expected and negotiate from a position of mutual respect." Amy stepped forward, her young voice cutting through the tension. "Director Jackson, with respect, I don't think you understand what we're dealing with. The hegemony isn't just a military force, they're representatives of a galactic civilization that's been around for thousands of years. They've seen every trick, every desperate last stand. They chose to give us a chance because they believe redemption is possible, not because they're weak." Jackson's expression hardened. "Dr. Okafor, you're barely out of graduate school. Leave strategic planning to those with experience." "Experience in what?" "Fighting galactic peacekeepers." Amy's voice rose with passion. "Director, this isn't a human conflict. This is a moral judgment by a civilization so far beyond us that we can barely comprehend their technology. Violence won't solve this. Then what will?" Brooks asked quietly. Sarah looked at Amy's datapad, then at the holographic display showing the positions of ships that could end human civilization with a thought. An idea began forming in her mind, desperate, probably impossible, but maybe their only real chance. "The redemption protocols," she said slowly. "Amy, you said the Accord has provisions for making amends. What exactly does that involve?" Consulted her notes. "From what I can decipher, it's not enough to just promise to be better. A species has to demonstrate active redemption, helping those they've harmed, sharing resources, putting the welfare of others above their own immediate interests." "That's impossible," Jackson scoffed. "Most of the species we've encountered are dead. You can't make amends to the extinct." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the weight of human sins and the possibility of salvation. She spoke. Her voice was steady with newfound purpose. "No, but we can make amends to the living, and we can prove that we've learned from our mistakes." She turned to Alina. "Dr. Vasquez, how many inhabited systems are within 50 light-years of Earth?" Alina pulled up her own data. "Preliminary surveys suggest at least 12, possibly more. Most are at pre-industrial technological levels." "And how many human colonies or outposts are in contact with these systems?" 7 that we know of." "Why?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Because we're going to do something that no human government has ever done before. We're going to give them up." The silence was deafening. Jackson found his voice first. "Give them up." "Doze. Colonies represent trillions in investment, thousands of jobs. Strategic resources, they represent the future of our species." Sarah cut him off. "Every one of those colonies was established on someone else's world, using someone else's resources, usually without their permission. If we want the hegemony to believe we've changed, we need to prove it." Brooks was staring at her like she'd gone insane. "Sarah, Even if the government agreed to this, which they won't, how would abandoning our colonies prove anything? We don't just abandon them. We turn them over to their rightful owners, along with all the technology and infrastructure we've built. We make reparations, show the galaxy that humanity is capable of putting justice above profit. Amy was nodding eagerly. It's not just about the colonies. Dr. Chen, this could work. If we can demonstrate a complete reversal of human colonial policy, if we can show active restitution to the species we've harmed, the hegemony might accept that. As genuine redemption, Alina finished. Jackson's face was red with anger. This is treason, pure and simple. You're talking about dismantling human civilization in space. I'm talking about saving human civilization, Sarah replied. Director, your plan might destroy 40% of their fleet. My plan might save 100% of our species. General Brooks was studying the star charts with the expression of a man calculating impossible odds. Sarah, even if this could work politically that's a massive if we don't have the resources to evacuate. Entire colonies in 33 days. We don't need to evacuate them. We need to transform them. Sarah's mind was racing now, seeing possibilities and connections. The colonists stay, but as partners instead of conquerors. We share our technology. Freely, we provide aid instead of exploitation. We help these civilizations advance at their own pace. If they refuse our help, if they want us gone entirely. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Then we leave. No arguments, no conditions. We prove to the galaxy that humanity has learned the difference between expansion and invasion. Jackson was already reaching for his communication device. I'm calling the president. This conversation is over, Sarah said quietly. This conversation is just beginning. She looked around at the ruins of the Colonial Administration building, then up at the sky where alien ships waited in silent judgment. Somewhere out there, the fate of humanity was being decided by beings whose moral development was thousands of years ahead of their own. The question was, could humanity change fast enough to matter? And could they do it before Director Jackson's? Hawkish instincts started a war they couldn't possibly win. As Jackson spoke rapidly into his communicator, Sarah made a decision that would either save her species or damn them all. She was going to contact the hegemony directly. Chapter 4. The message at 1T9 days remained. Sarah stood in the abandoned radio telescope array in Arecibo, watching technicians make final adjustments to equipment that hadn't been designed for interstellar communication. The massive dish stretched above them like a metal flower reaching toward the stars, its surface scarred by years of weather and neglect. It had taken 4 days to convince President Martinez to authorize the direct communication attempt. For days of heated arguments, leaked intelligence reports, and street demonstrations that had left 3 major cities under martial law. The world was tearing itself apart while the hegemony waited in silent judgment. Amy worked frantically at a control console, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. Dr. Chen, we're getting some strange feedback from the hegemony ships. It's almost like they listening. Of course they're listening, Elena said from her position at another console. The question is whether they'll respond to civilians when they've been ignoring government communications. General Brooks paced behind them, his military bearing unable to hide his obvious anxiety. Sarah, you realize this is our only shot. If this doesn't work, Director Jackson gets his war. Sarah finished grimly. Humanity dies fighting instead of learning. The past 4 days had seen escalating tensions between the diplomatic and military factions within the government. Jackson's supporters argued that any species advanced enough to threaten Earth would respect strength over submission. Sarah's team maintained that the hegemony's moral framework made violence not just futile, but proof of humanity's unfitness for galactic civilization. The deciding factor had been an unexpected ally. President Martinez himself, Dr. Chen Martinez, had said during their final meeting, "I've spent 30 years in politics. I've learned one thing. Sometimes the impossible choice is the only choice worth making." Now, as Sarah prepared to broadcast humanity's plea for redemption to beings who could erase Earth with a thought, she wondered if the president's faith had been misplaced. "Signal locked," Amy announced, We're broadcasting on all the frequencies. The hegemony has used, plus the mathematical constants they should recognize as intelligent communication. Sarah stepped up to the microphone, acutely aware that her next words might determine the fate of billions of people. She thought about the Kalari delegation approaching human colonists with gifts, about the children in their cities when the orbital bombardment began, about all the species that had trusted humanity only to be betrayed. This is Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth speaking for the human species, or Commander Zixthuk. We know you're listening. We have a proposal. The radio array fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the distant sound of protesters outside the facility's perimeter. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then Amy's console erupted with incoming data. They're responding. Amy's voice cracked with excitement and terror. Full audio-visual transmission coming through. The air above the radio telescope shimmered. And suddenly Zixthuk's alien form materialized in perfect holographic detail. His four eyes regarded them with expressions that were impossible for human psychology to interpret. Dr. Chen, you broadcast on frequencies used for scientific collaboration, not military communication. An interesting choice. Sarah forced herself to meet the alien commander's gaze. War Commander, we're not military. We're scientists, and we're here to discuss humanity's redemption. Redemption. Zixthuk pronounced the word carefully, as if testing its weight. Your species believes it can be redeemed. We believe we must be redeemed, Sarah corrected. War Commander, we know about the Galactic Accord. We know about the redemption protocols. And we know that our actions on Kepler-4, for 2b, and dozens of other worlds have violated every principle of civilized interstellar conduct. For the first time, Zixthuk's expression seemed to shift towards something that might have been surprise. You acknowledge your crimes without deflection or excuse? Sarah thought about Director Jackson and his supporters, who even now were probably preparing military responses to what they saw as humanity's capitulation. Some of us do. The question is whether acknowledgement is enough. Continue, Sarah gestured to Amy, who activated a holographic display showing the locations of human colonies and first contact sites throughout local space. War Commander, humanity has 17 active colonies and outposts within 50 light-years of Earth. Most were established on worlds already inhabited by indigenous species. We propose to transfer full control of these installations to their rightful owners, along with all human technology, infrastructure, and resources. Zixthuk's four eyes blinked in sequence, and expression Sarah was beginning to recognize as intense concentration. You would abandon your interstellar presence entirely? It's not abandon, transform. Sarah pulled up another display, this one showing proposed aid and development programs. No. We want to offer partnership instead of domination. Technology sharing. Instead of resource extraction, cultural exchange, instead of territorial expansion. And if the indigenous species refuse your presence entirely, Sarah met the alien commander's gaze without flinching. Then we leave. No conditions, no demands for compensation. We prove to the galaxy that humanity has learned the difference between cooperation and conquest. The hologram was silent for a long moment. Around the radio telescope, Sarah could hear the low rumble of military aircraft Jackson's forces, no doubt preparing for what they saw as the inevitable failure of diplomacy. Dr. Chenzik said finally, your proposal demonstrates understanding of the redemption protocols. But understanding and implementation are different matters. What do your species enforce such radical changes in colonial policy? Sarah had been dreading this question. War Commander, I won't lie to you. There are elements within human government and military that oppose any form of accommodation with the hegemony. They believe violence is the answer to our current situation. And what do you believe? I believe that violence got us into this situation in the first place. I believe that a species capable of faster-than-light travel should be capable of moral growth. And I believe that the hegemony gave us 37 days because you wanted to see if we could change, not because you needed time to plan our destruction. Something that might have been approval flickered across Zixthuk's features. Dr. Chen, the hegemony, has observed 17 species through similar evaluations. 11 chose violence when faced with judgment. They no longer exist. 4 chose submission but proved incapable of meaningful change. They were relocated to systems where they could not harm other species, chose redemption, and succeeded in transforming their civilizations. What happened to those two species? They became valued members of galactic civilization. The representatives now sit on the Hegemony Council that authorized your evaluation. Hope flared in Sarah's chest, but Zixtok's next words tempered it immediately.
However, Dr. Chen, your species faces a unique challenge.
Never before have we encountered a civilization where the governing authority lacks the power to enforce moral transformation.
Sarah's blood went cold. What do you mean? You're aware of Director Jackson's military preparations. We know that significant elements of your species would prefer war to redemption. The Galactic Accord cannot accept the continued existence of a species that retains the capacity and will to repeat its historical crimes. Amy leaned forward desperately. War Commander, surely you understand that any intelligent species will have internal conflicts. You can't judge all of humanity by the actions of extremists. Dr. Okafor Zixtok's attention shifted to the young xenobiologist. Extremists did not massacre the Kaleri. Military officers following official policy did. Extremists did not authorize the destruction of Vorthok burial grounds. Corporate executives maximizing profits did. Your species' crimes were not aberrations. They were expressions of your civilization's core values. The truth of it hit Sarah like a physical blow. The hegemony wasn't just judging humanity's actions, they were judging humanity's nature. War Commander, Sarah said quietly, what would it take to prove that our nature can change? Zixtok was silent for several heartbeats. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of final judgment. Dr. Chen, the hegemony will accept your species' redemption on one condition. Humanity must demonstrate unified commitment to the transformation you propose. Not majority commitment. Not governmental commitment. Unified commitment. Sarah felt the blood drained from her face. You're asking for something that's never existed in human history? We are asking for something that has never been necessary in human history, Dr. Chen. You have 28 days to achieve what your species has never achieved. True unity of purpose. The hologram flickered and began to fade. Wait! Sarah called out desperately. How can we possibly, Dr. Chen? Zixtok's voice was already growing distant. That is what you must discover. The transmission ended, leaving the radio telescope array in sudden, oppressive silence. Amy was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. Unity of purpose. Every human being agreeing to the same goal. Brooks shook his head grimly. It's impossible. Can't even get unity within our own government, let alone across 7 billion people. Sarah stared up at the massive radio dish, thinking about the weight of 7 billion lives and the impossibility of what they'd been asked to achieve. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the sound of approaching helicopters. Jackson's people coming to find out what had been said and to implement their own solution if they didn't like the answer. Maybe, she said slowly, that's exactly the point. Elena looked at her sharply. What do you mean? Sarah turned away from the radio telescope, her mind already racing toward a conclusion that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. I mean, maybe the hegemony isn't asking us to achieve the impossible. Maybe they're asking us to become impossible. As military helicopters appeared on the horizon and the countdown to humanity's judgment continued, Sarah Chen began to formulate the most desperate plan in human history. Plan that would require every person on Earth to choose between their old nature and their survival. A plan that would transform humanity forever, or destroy them in the attempt. Hush hush, epilogue. The choice eternal, 24 hours remained. The world had gone quiet, not the silence of peace, but the terrible stillness that comes before a storm that will reshape everything. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the International Space Station, looking down at Earth through reinforced windows that had witnessed humanity's greatest triumphs and darkest hours. 20-7 days had passed since her communication with War Commander Zixtok. 27 days of the most intense transformation in human history. It had started with the children. Amy Okafor's younger sister, teacher in Lagos, had shown Sarah's recorded conversation with the hegemony to her students. Within hours, those children had shared it with their parents, their neighbors, their their communities. The footage spread across social media faster than any government could control it. Translated into every human language by volunteers who understood that this wasn't about politics or nationality. It was about survival. But more than survival, it was about becoming worthy of survival. The response had been unlike anything in recorded history. Protests, yes, but not the kind the world was used to. These were protests demanding change, demanding that their governments implement Sarah's redemption plan, demanding that humanity choose growth over destruction. The military had tried to intervene, of course. Director Jackson's faction had attempted a coup 3 days after the broadcast, claiming that negotiating with aliens was treason, but something extraordinary had happened. The soldiers had refused to follow orders, not all of them, not even most of them at first, but enough. And as word spread of military personnel choosing humanity's future over military hierarchy, more had joined them. Then more. By the 10th day, something unprecedented was happening. Governments were falling, but not to violence or chaos. They were falling to a species-wide demand for moral transformation. Sarah checked her communication device. Messages continued to pour in from around the world and throughout human space. Colony ship. Endeavor requesting immediate implementation of Kepler 4.4 to be memorial protocols. We're ready to return control to Kalari survivors. Mining Consortium Beta 7 shutting down Vorthok system operations. Full infrastructure transfer to indigenous representatives beginning immediately. Trade Post Gamma initiating reparations. Program for displaced Zanari populations. Corporate board unanimously approved. It was happening. All of it. Every human colony, every corporate outpost, every military installation, all volunteering to implement the transformation that Sarah had proposed. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Amy floated up beside her, tablet in hand, her young face bearing the weight of humanity's future. Dr. Chen, the final counts are coming in. 94.7% of all human settlements have voted to implement the redemption protocols. Sarah nodded, but her expression remained grim. And the other, 5.3%. There, holding out. Mostly corporate installations and military bases in the outer systems are demanding government protection and threatening to resist any attempt at transformation. That was the problem. The hegemony had been clear. Unified commitment. Majority commitment. Not overwhelming commitment. Complete commitment. Elena's voice crackled over the communication system from Earth's surface. Sarah, we're getting reports of hegemony scout ships moving toward the holdout installations. I think they're conducting final evaluations. Sarah closed her eyes. After everything they'd achieved, after the most remarkable transformation in human history, it might all come down to a few hundred people who couldn't let go of the old ways. Dr. Chen. Amy's voice was small and frightened. What happens if we don't achieve unity? What happens to the 94% who did change? Sarah was about to answer when her communication device chimed with an incoming message. The source. Identifier made her heart stop. Hegemony command. Dr. Chen. War Commander Zixthok S. Voice filled the observation deck. The evaluation period is concluded. Are you prepared to receive judgment? Sarah activated the visual communication system, bringing up Zixthok's holographic form. The alien commander appeared as imposing as ever, but there was something different in his expression, something that might have been respect. War Commander, we're ready. But I have to be honest with we haven't achieved complete unity. There are still installations refusing to implement the redemption protocols. Zixthok S4 eyes blinked in sequence. We are aware of the holdouts. Dr. Chen, we have been observing their responses to your species transformation, and 5 installations have maintained their refusal to participate in redemption protocols. However, in each case, the personnel at these installations represent less than 0.3% of their local human populations. The remaining 99.7% have formally requested implementation of transformation policies despite corporate or military opposition. Sarah felt a flutter of hope. What does that mean for humanity's evaluation? Zixthok was quiet for a moment, consulting what appeared to be a complex data display that hung in the air beside him. Dr. Chen, the Hegemony Council has reviewed humanity's response to the redemption challenge. In our civilization's history, no species has achieved the level of voluntary transformation that yours has demonstrated. Sarah's heart pounded. Does that mean ... It means that humanity has proven something we did not expect to see. Your species has shown that moral evolution can occur not just in individuals, but across an entire civilization in real time. The 5% who resist change do not represent your species' nature. They represent your species' past. Amy grabbed Sarah's arm, her eyes wide with desperate hope. War Commander, are you saying humanity has passed the evaluation? Dr. Okafor, I am saying that humanity has exceeded the evaluation. The Galactic Accord requires only evidence of the capacity for change. Your species has demonstrated active voluntary transformation on a scale we have never witnessed. Sarah felt tears floating in the zero gravity around her face. What happens now? Zixthok hologram expanded, showing images of vast space stations, thriving worlds, and beings from dozens of different species working together in harmony. Now, Dr. Chen, humanity is invited to join galactic civilization, not as conquerors or colonizers, but as partners in the greatest endeavor any species can undertake, the peaceful exploration and nurturing of life throughout the universe. And the holdouts? The installations that refuse to change will be given one final opportunity to reconsider their position. Those who continue to resist will be relocated to isolated systems where they cannot harm others. The choice, as always, remains theirs. Sarah looked down at Earth, where billions of people were watching this conversation, waiting to learn the fate of their species. She thought about the journey they'd all taken from the massacre at Kepler 4 for it to be to this moment of potential redemption. War Commander, there's something I need to know. Why did you give us this chance? Why didn't you just remove us immediately when you discovered what we'd done? Zixthok's eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the holographic connection, as if he were seeing across vast distances of space and time. Dr. Chen, 3,000 years ago, my own species faced a similar judgment. We had conquered 17 worlds, enslaved 43 species, and convinced ourselves that might made right. His voice carried the weight of ancient regret. The hegemony of that era offered us the same choice they offered you: change or face extinction. Chose change. We chose change. And in doing so, we discovered that redemption is not a destination, is a journey that never ends. Every day, every decision, every interaction with another species is an opportunity to prove that we have learned from our mistakes. Amy wiped tears from her eyes. How do we make sure we don't backslide? How do we make sure humanity stays on this path? Zixthok's expression became something that Sarah realized was a smile alien, but unmistakably warm. Dr. Okafor, by asking that question, you have already begun to answer it. The species that succeed in galactic civilization are not those who never make mistakes. They are those who never stop questioning themselves, never stop growing, never stop choosing compassion over conquest. The holographic display shifted, showing star charts with thousands of marked systems. The galaxy is vast, Dr. Chen. There are young species taking their first steps into space, ancient civilizations pursuing knowledge beyond mortal comprehension, and wonders that your science has not yet dreamed of. All of this is now open to humanity not to exploit, but to experience and protect. Sarah looked at Amy, at the Earth below them, at the alien commander who had become humanity's unexpected salvation. When do we begin? You began 27 days ago, when you chose growth over destruction. Everything from this moment forward is simply ... continuation. The transmission began to fade, but Zixthok's final words came through clearly. Welcome to the galaxy. Dr. Chen, welcome to the eternal choice between what we were and what we can become. As the hologram disappeared, Sarah and Amy floated in silence, watching their transformed world turn slowly below them. Somewhere in the distance, the hegemony fleet was beginning to move not toward Earth in judgment, but outward, toward the stars, ready to escort humanity into a future none of them had dared to imagine. The choice was made. Humanity had chosen to become something new, and in the vast cosmos beyond their small blue world, entire civilizations waited to see what that transformation would bring.